Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we finally have justice for Mr. Jussie Smollett. And of course the story was always ridiculous, and he got convicted on 5 counts, and he could be doing some time. We don't know, up to 20 years possibly, but he hasn't had it takes a minute after the conviction before they decide how much time he's going to get. So we'll breathlessly wait that decision, because maybe he won't get quite what he deserves, but he was at least found guilty. And it's funny how the New York Times is reporting the story, telling it like, well, the jury chose to believe that he was guilty. And it's like, what other conclusion could a rational human being come to? So we've talked about the Jussie Smollett here and there. We talked about it extensively some other days and went down memory lane. But we do have the conviction, and I want to bring up some other stuff, other tweets. We got some responses from the White House about it, which Jen Psaki actually did a pretty good diversion tactic, I suppose. So I guess she knew it was coming, so she was ready for it. So we're going to go through some of those things, and also Build Back Better. The CBO score came in, and guess what? Biden lied about it just all being able to pay for itself. So are we not shocked? We are not shocked. We are absolutely never shocked by these people and the crazy things they tell us. Before we jump into it all today, I do want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC. I'm here in their studio. I always love being in the studio. It's a very nice facility. If I say something that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. And I may very well say something that triggers you today as I go down memory lane with some of these people who are quite toxic in our culture, really trying to push just terrible, horrible stereotype about Americans and the people that they don't like, who are different voting bloc. And this was really about framing Americans, and the people who believe the story already have their opinions about who they hate. So it sounded believable to them. They wanted to believe it. It was always a ridiculous story, but they wanted to believe it. So anyway, they don't care. I don't care if you're triggered. You can just move on. But we're going to talk about stuff today. Please check out Brighter Michigan PAC. They do great work, and I'm always appreciative to be in the studio. Also, check out blacktnews.com. Check out different content I have on the website, different articles that I have on the website. If you would like to support Black Tea News, you appreciate content like this, that people are willing to speak out and want to help build Black Tea a little faster, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a gift. Whatever you can do, 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever you want to do on the website, you can go ahead and give that. I appreciate that. I thank you to everyone who shares Black Tea News, invited other people to like it, sharing me and following me on my social media accounts. My media is Black Tea News. Well, my website is blacktnews.com, but all my social media is at Black Tea News on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. The only one that is different is at Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea. That is also my backup TikTok account, so follow that stuff too. It's going well though. I'm doing really well on the accounts. Steady growth, and I owe that to you guys, and I thank you for tuning in every day, just about every day. I take my Sunday off. But I appreciate you guys being here with me. So also check out different merchandise that we have. It's Christmas season. We've got the goat hoodie. Man, let me tell you guys this story really quick. So people, I can't even remember why this person was so triggered. I think it was one of my pro-life videos. And so they're like, I hate people like you. And so he insulted me. I can't remember if he insulted my teeth. A lot of people go after my gap, and I don't understand why, because I guess other people are insecure about it. I've been taught or raised, and I don't know if this is a thing that Black people make up, but it's considered a beauty mark. So it's just never. And I don't care if whether you think I'm marked with beauty or not. My mommy, my daddy love me. I'm not insecure. so, um, so anyway, I never really thought of my gap as a bad thing, and so it's like the first thing people go to and want to talk about. So he made a crack about my teeth and whatnot. So I just did a reply, and I just let people know, I'm like, when people say these things, I like to highlight them. Sometimes I just block them, but sometimes I highlight them because I want people to know how abusive pro-choice men can be. Because it was on a pro-choice video that he decided to say that. We could have talked about the issues about whether it's a life and all the other stuff, but he just attacked the woman. It's not about woman empowerment for a lot of these people, and I'm not saying everyone is like that, but they can say they've said some really nasty things to me. And then I just went through like the history of the pro-life movement and then the pro-choice movement and how it was men who really pushed abortion and knew that they needed the feminists on board, the founders of NARAL, Larry Later, Bernard Nathanson, who actually had a Catholic conversion. So he ended up being really, really against abortion, but they lied about how many women were harmed from abortion with illegal abortions. You might have heard like 5,000, 10,000 women were like dying or whatnot from back alley abortions. They made up those numbers. They made up public support for abortion, so more to trick people into doing it, and got the feminists on their side and whatnot. And then the Alan Guttmacher, I think maybe how you say his name, he took over Planned Parenthood from Margaret Sanger, who we all don't like, right? But he was also into eugenics and wanted to push abortion even further. So and then Roe v. Wade was a case, actually, all actually really rooted in lies. I mean, the woman said she was in the case, the woman said she was raped. She wasn't really raped, and she actually ended up having her baby. But you had all justices make this court decision that isn't really a good court decision, if you're being honest. I understand people want to keep their right to abortion, but Roe v. Wade's not actually a good decision. So I just stated a couple of those things in the comments in my video when I addressed this person. And so then they reply and they said, I just hate all Trumpers. I hate all Trumpers and anti-vaxxers, and you guys are trash, garbage. Because I guess they had to like basically say the same thing twice and be redundant. They're like, you're trash, garbage, human beings, and you think you're holier, or you think you're so holy or something like that. So there's this trend on TikTok that I finally got to do, and I was in a video where I had my goat hoodie on because Trump's in the goat hoodie. So I wanted to be like, hey, I'm one of these MAGA people you're talking about. And then the music kind of ramps up, and then there's like a light behind you, and it's supposed to look pretty dramatic. And so I had a ring light, and it looked like I had a halo. And I had like this lace veil. It's a cover, but I put it on my head as if it was a veil, and I was in a white dress, and I was holding a Bible, and I had the scripture that said, be ye holy for I am holy. So he ended up deleting his comment. So I just want to share that story with you because it made me tickled. It made me tickled. But anyway, you can get that same hoodie on blacktnews.com and all kinds of other merchandise at the shop. So let's jump into it. Before I usually like to start off with my funny thing, but the Jussie Smollett, the whole thing is a funny. So I want to address two things really quickly before I jump into that segment, because it's basically going to be the main meat of the day. First, I wanted to mention this Occupy Democrats tweet. Illinois introduces a bill to force unvaccinated residents to pay out of pocket for their hospital treatment if they catch COVID, saying that they must assume the risk and take responsibility for their carelessness. Retweet if you think that your state should do the same. So if you have ever retweeted Occupy Democrats, I don't want to say you might be a moron, but there's evidence. There is evidence there for that conclusion. And I know people who have retweeted them, but they usually reach and have really bad arguments and whatever. So people who believe, and this It's amazing that there's people still reaching with this sort of logic. And the people on The View also like said something, are still angry, claiming that these variants that are happening are the fault of the people who are unvaccinated, and they're still trying to sow division. And I'm like, why can't you just wake up and see that people are just going to keep making you afraid, making you scared, making you hostile and angry as long as you allow them to do that? And so instead of deciding that they can just go about their normal lives and go back to living life, or realizing that the government is using their fear as a means to just keep getting control, they turn their rage toward their neighbor who won't comply. So this is really a comply or die attitude. That if you don't get it, then the vaccine, and then you're then you should just take all responsibility. So first of all, people who were getting treated with for COVID, they were taking that out of your taxpayer dollars. They took the taxpayer dollars to pay for the vaccine, and all these companies and stuff were paid for it. So your money has already gone to the vaccine that you may or may not want, and your money has already gone to treat people who did need treatment. So why should, if you are sick and you don't get the vaccine, maybe you can't even take the vaccine. There's people who cannot take it, who's allergic to all that stuff, who will have a bad reaction, or it's likely that they'll have a bad reaction. So if they get sick and they show up at the hospital, these people don't want to treat them, even though they've technically paid for other people to get treated, even though they've technically helped to pay for the vaccine that everyone else has taken. That's psychotic. And you also have to remember that these are the people who are like, free healthcare, free healthcare, free healthcare. So it's not free healthcare if people won't do what you want them to do. COVID should make it known that we need as less government control as possible, because they're actually not very good at their job. They're actually not very good at taking care of us. They're not. And there's always a catch. There's always a catch. Like people working in these nursing homes and people taking like Medicaid or whatever from the government to pay for all this stuff. They're like, well, you get these funds. Therefore, if you don't bow the way we want you to bow, you are going to be fired. Why would you just invite them into your home and just allow them to take over like that? There's a song, an old church song, said, "Don't let the devil ride." And don't let the devil ride, because he'll surely try to drive. Don't let him ride. So that's the same way about the government. Don't let them in. Don't let them in. They're like vampires. Don't let them in, because they will eat you. They will eat you if they can. And I don't understand why people can't wake up and see this, because when the guy you don't like is in office, you want him to do as little as possible. Trump closing like the borders, like trying from flights or whatever coming in internationally. And they're like, oh, he's xenophobic. Biden doing it from like the sniffle variant, the sniffle variant. No one dying on record or yet. And they're like, no, that makes sense. Now, some people have woken up and said, now this is starting not to make sense, but you're really, 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 really late. You're really, really late. And another absurd thing about this tweet, and they saying they must assume the risk and take responsibility for their carelessness if they get sick. Well, also there's the fact that you can take the vaccine and still get sick, and you can still spread it. So people are weighing their pros and their cons. I heard a story the other day of a woman, apparently TikTok keeps trying to take down her videos, but she got the vaccine and her husband had got the vaccine. And so he had a really bad reaction. He had myocarditis, was hospital stuff. So she's telling her story. So obviously she got the vaccine, so she's not an anti-vaxxer. But it's made her think differently because her husband ended up in the hospital. And so her doctor's theory was that her husband already had COVID and the shot reacted badly because of that. And so she's like, for the past few years, her husband has barely even had the sniffles. So if he actually did have COVID in the past, because people kept telling her, well, it's a good thing he got the shot, because it would have been way worse if he caught it. And she's like, well, if my doctor is correct and he already had COVID in the past, then he was asymptomatic. So don't just keep saying, well, it's a good thing you got it. I know the adverse reactions suck, but at least you're more protected now. And if you actually had COVID, because in her case, it's not true. It's not true. And I doubt that's true for a lot of people anyway. But people don't want to hear her story. Obviously, again, she's not anti-vax. But she had a bad experience. So people hear these, and they see how when people express these stories, how they're demonized, and apps or whatever want to suppress them or take down their information or whatever, and it makes people suspicious. It makes people suspicious. But that's not even the train of thought that I started to go. Them saying they must assume the risk and take responsibility. So anyway, people are willing to assume the risk. They are willing to assume the risk anyway. That's the whole point. But they don't want them to assume the risk. But why do they have this logic with the COVID, but they don't have this logic when it comes to sex and responsibility and women and abortion? That if you have sex, then you must assume the risk. Whether you take birth control or not take birth control, sometimes it fails. Sometimes, most of the time, it works 100% like it's supposed to. But the only way you know you're not going to get pregnant is if you're abstinent, unless you're, married or something. But she consented too. So, so if you assume the risk, why don't you take responsibility for that? They would never apply this logic. They would never, Occupy Democrats would never apply this logic to women. So I have people who I've seen in my, friends network on Facebook or whatever share Occupy Democrats from time to time. They're the worst. They are the absolute worst. Absolutely. But people share this stuff. They have a lot of followers because they're not alone. And I keep saying we got to push people on how they think because their logic is absolutely not consistent. Someone said, where do you order a shirt? You order a shirt on blacktnews.com on the website. Black Tea News, just spelled just like my little profile title in the corner. And you can get all kinds of merchandise. Thank you for asking. And the other thing I want to mention before I get to the Jussie Smollett is that the CBO score came out for the Build Back Better, and Biden kept saying that it was going to be free. It's going to all pay for itself, and that's not the case. And you are a moron if you believe that. And it's going to add $3 trillion to the debt by 2031. So people on Twitter right now have started the trend Build Back Broke. And I don't know if that was like an organic Twitter troll. I don't know if that started with sort of a wise person at the RNC or somewhere. But I did see like Ronna McDaniel use that sort of language. So it's funny. It's really funny. Jen Psaki said the other day, she was asked, was it going to pass by the end of the year? She said she was optimistic and she hopes that is the case, or believes that is the case. If Republicans at all budge on this and allow that heinous bill to pass, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to be so mad. There's so many bad things in it. And of course, there's a lot of social nonsense in it. And they got to be the party of no. They got to go back to being the party, that's what people called them in the Obama era. But sometimes they did buckle. That's why I was very surprised that they did not buckle with the Gorsuch pick. And my goodness, praise the Lord that Mitch and them showed some gumption and they would not even allow him to be like heard, because if they allowed the proceedings to go on at all, you would have had like Lindsey Graham and other people probably been like, yeah, and would have voted him in, and then to have him. I mean, I'm sorry, Garland. I said Gorsuch. Garland. Gorsuch took the seat that Garland would have had, but they blocked Merrick Garland from getting on the seat, and I was surprised that they held out for as long as they did, and I was glad that they did, and obviously I was happy with the result. I don't know if I'll never forget it, but I still remember that night when Trump announced Gorsuch, and I was in my complex watching TV, and I had kind of tears in my eyes. I'm just like, we just saved the darn nation. We just saved the nation with this election, man. And people were so angry. Many of my leftist friends like, they stole this seat, they stole this seat, they stole this seat. And knowing what we know now, because people are like, oh, he's so above board, and knowing what we know now about the letter with the school board association and the White House and the DOJ working together to possibly go after parents or monitoring parents or tagging parents with like as if they're terrorists. I'm so glad this guy is not on the Supreme Court. I'm so glad he's not on the Supreme Court, and that they held out and were strong. So thank the Lord. Thank the Lord for that. But if you believe that the Build Back Better was going to pay for itself, you guys were crazy. So let's get to the meat. Let's get to the meat with Mr. Smollett. So I want to start off with this video. It does drop the N-word a few times, just FYI, trigger warning. Someone reenacted that night, and I just watched this, and I thought it was so funny, so I wanted to share today.
Don't ever forget what happened to that French actor. Jussie Smollett. He's a very famous French actor. Apparently, when he was walking down the street late at night, two white men came out of the shadows with MAGA hats on and beat him up, tied a rope around his neck, called him all kinds of niggas, and put some bleach on him and ran off into the night.
Get the water and pull on my face, okay? Water my face. Go. And they put bleach. Put bleach on me. What the bleach together? No.
And I want a little gay boy who might watch this to see that I fought back.
On his neck. Let me fight back a little bit. Let me fight back.
All right. Ow, that hurt, nigga. What the hell did you do? Hit him one last time to show we're serious. And run away so the cops don't see anything that we already did. All right.
Why? Why me? Why me?
So of course the story was always ridiculous that 2 a.m. Chicago, it was so cold, there was a polar vortex. It was abnormally cold. This was a couple years ago. And he goes out for a Subway sandwich. A Subway sandwich. Now, I'm not getting up to go get a Subway sandwich like that. Not 2 a.m. like that in the cold. In the cold. So he goes out and he claimed he was attacked by some people in MAGA hats and that they poured stuff on him, which I believe they said was bleach, and that they had like a cord and they like rope cord or whatever put it around his neck. And he was telling people, I want you to know I fought him off. I fought back. And apparently he fought them back while still clinging onto his Subway sandwich, because I guess it was just that good of a sandwich that he had to protect the sandwich. And which reminds me of a story with my sister. When she was little, maybe 3, she was walking on the back of a couch, like you're not supposed to, right? But kids climb on couches or whatever. So she had a sprinkled donut in her hand. She had a sprinkled donut, and then she started to lose her balance. And then a decision had to be made. A decision had to be made. Did she try to reclaim her balance, or did she let go of the sprinkled donut? Well, I will tell you, we were in the emergency room that night. But she got her sprinkled donut, and Jussie Smollett got his Subway sandwich. So I think they had the security cameras from like the Subway and whatever. And so they got the police, and he wouldn't cooperate with them. He wouldn't give them their phone. Of course, he wouldn't give them their phone because he was texting the guys. And so he wouldn't be cooperative with the police, and he obstructed quite a bit. So the story was always fishy. It was fishy, and it was annoying to the police because they had to do all this investigation. And why wouldn't they have to do all this investigation? First of all, yeah, it's their job to do that kind of stuff. But it became such a big national news story with so many people leaving tweets. You had Kerry Washington, Rhonda Shimes, you had Mark Hamill. You had the current president of the United States right now. You had Kamala Harris. You had Rashida Tlaib, Nancy Pelosi, which I've shown some of these tweets before. Here's Nancy's tweet. I don't think I showed you Nancy's before, but she deleted it, so I think it's worth seeing it. The racist, homophobic attack on Jussie Smollett is an affront on our humanity. It's an affront on our humanity. Our humanity. No one should be attacked for who they are and whom they love. I pray that Jussie has a speedy recovery and that justice is served. May we all commit to ending this hate once and for all. Well, yeah, justice was served. So, suck it. Justice was served. And it was served to Mr. Smollett. Justice for Jussie. Now, unfortunately, he does have to share. I didn't make this joke, but he has to unfortunately share the cell with his attacker. But we don't actually know what his sentencing is yet. They haven't said it yet. We just know that he was guilty on the 5 counts. And back to Kamala Harris's tweet. Jussie Smollett is one of the kindest, most gentle human beings I know. I'm praying for his quick recovery. This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because their sexuality or color of their skin. We must confront this hate. And Rashida Tlaib's tweet is right next to it. So someone asked her later, this isn't recent. I don't forget when this happened, but this happened a while ago, because I think this is on Shepard's show and he's no longer on Fox, but asking her about the tweet. I don't know if she's had any comment lately about this, but she tried to pretend like she know what they were talking about.
Which tweet? What tweet?
About saying that it is a modern day lynching, that
sorry.
Yes, Jussie Smollett.
Okay, so I will say this about that case. I think that the facts are still unfolding, and I'm very concerned about, obviously.
Yeah, she's very concerned. The facts are still unfolding. Well, why'd you have to comment the way that you commented? And she's a prosecutor. She's not stupid. She's not a stupid woman. She's someone who lies up the wazoo. So I'm assuming she probably knew that the story didn't sound like it made a lot of sense. And I can understand people being like emotionally caught up in it and whatnot. And that's your friend, or you hang out, or sometimes, or maybe you call it, maybe you met them one time and you just want to be down. And now you're like, oh, he's one of the kindest persons. I don't know how deep the relationship is, but what I do know is that the story always sounded dumb. And they didn't allow themselves to think objectively and critically, or they just wanted it to be true, or they knew it was false and they pushed it anyway because the narrative was more important than the actual facts. The narrative that we live in such a terrible, homophobic, racist society, and it's all the fault of these darn maggots, as they call us. That's their thinking, that's their story, and that's why they wanted to push this the way that they did. So at the White House, they did ask Jen Psaki after the verdict how if they regretted those tweets or if they should not jump to conclusions. And she actually had a pretty good pushback today.
Since the guilty verdict, are there any lessons learned here on rushing to judgment when a crime is alleged?
I think there are lessons learned perhaps for everybody who commented at the time, including former President Trump. I wish April Ryan was here because I think she asked him the question. Do I see her somewhere or no? Okay. She just left, where he said, I can tell you that it's horrible. It's doesn't get worse, in response to her question about about Jussie Smollett at the time. I would say that we respect the jury's decision. Lying to the police, particularly about something as heinous as a hate crime, is shameful. Instances of that need to be investigated fully, and those found guilty need to be punished. And false accusations divert valuable police resources away from important investigations. They make it harder for real victims to come forward and be believed.
Now, I don't like, someone asked why they always go to Trump. Because it's what they have to do. They say that they don't want to talk about him, but then they go ahead and they talk about him to deflect. But today, I mean, her job is to represent the president and the interest of the president and so on, and to give the news to the press. She does lie quite a bit, and she definitely found a way to go around and not talk about Kamala Harris and have her be accountable for the tweet that she put out and the statements that they put out, and Joe Biden put out too. Joe Biden tweeted something as well. But that's her job. So she actually did her job today. She knew it was coming, and so she deflected with Trump. And I don't admire her, but she did her job today as far as her representing her boss, and being ready for that. And Trump, but by the way, Trump saying, "Oh, it's terrible," which I can probably think about when this happened, them asking the question. He just like didn't want to fight with them. He probably thought the story was stupid. Don Jr. always thought it was stupid. And but April Ryan's asking the question, and to not make it like a big soundbite, he's like, "It's terrible. It's awful." Like, he didn't say, he said, "If it's true," because that would have sparked more outrage. I mean, Trump tweeted and talked more than he should have on a lot of occasions. But there were times when he just dialed it back a bit, I guess. So do I believe that Trump thought that the story made sense, that MAGA people, he knows he does not have a lot of, no, he likes to pretend he has a lot of love everywhere and that there's just a silent majority everywhere. But we're talking about in Chicago, 2 a.m. in a polar vortex. Okay. So he probably knew that the story didn't make a lot of sense, but like, dealing with the press, and it's like, "Yeah, it's terrible. Sounds terrible." So is it dramatic the way that everyone else was dramatic? No, not at all. But it was a good pass on her part. It was a good pass. Of course, we had Mark Hamill say stuff, sending love to Jussie Smollett after this horrific attack. So and who knows if they actually believe this. Alyssa Milano is really involved in politics and stuff, and she's always talking garbage, and she stood up for him. I don't know if she said anything about the verdict yet. And Lori Lightfoot, of course, said stuff, thoughts and prayers. But AOC and other people said stuff as well. Swalwell, who's an idiot. Here people literally wanted to blame the MAGA people for creating this climate. Of course, this stuff was a hoax, so they're just so ridiculous. And you had Bernie Sanders, all these people saying ridiculous stuff. And of course, Biden said something as well. So she could have mentioned Biden at the press conference, and she didn't. But they wanted it to be true. So they went along with it. They absolutely went along with it because they wanted it to be true. I don't believe that all these people, now maybe some of the celebrities did. Maybe they did. I mean, some of these people know him, like, or know those circles, and maybe they don't think that someone would do this because it's so dumb. I mean, it's an unbelievable story, but everything he did was so dumb. Like, he paid for them to do it with a check. Like, that's criminal activity number one. Like, you do stuff in cash. Like, like he wrote them a check. He's tweeting with them with his phone, so he wouldn't give it to them. Like, you didn't like contact all of them on a burner phone or something. You use your actual like phone, and then you did a practice run of it, so it was caught on surveillance. So there was so many bad decisions. So on one hand, could you be like, but why would someone fake this? Why would someone do it? But no, I think maybe they're caught up in their emotions, but I think most people thought it was dumb, and they really wanted to believe it. And if you were capable of believing this ridiculous story, it's because your perception of America is totally skewed. It's absolutely skewed. So I thought a good example of this. Well, let me play a little bit of the coverage of the aftermath of the trial, just to list a little bit of the summary.
We have a producer in the courtroom who is texting me right now that Smollett is guilty on the first 5 charges. We'll wait and see what happens on that 6th charge. He's charged with 6 low-level felony counts of lying to police. There are varying charges in there. There's lying about a hate crime because he's a black gay man. There's lying about battery because he was injured. And then there's lying about aggravated battery because he said that his attackers were wearing masks. In closing arguments yesterday, the defense pointed to 6 items that they felt destroyed Smollett's story. They say that he withheld critical evidence like his cell phone data and his medical records. They say he misled police about his attacker's ID. They say he faked evidence by tampering with that rope or that noose around his neck. They say he lied about who attacked him. They also say that medical evidence corroborated the Osundara brothers' story. They say that Jussie Smollett told them to hold their punches when they hit him, and a Northwestern doctor testified under oath that Jussie Smollett had no known injuries. And the 6th point was that Jussie Smollett never signed the criminal complaint against the brothers.
Yeah, so all kinds of craziness, all kinds of dumb things involved with the case. But again, if you believed any of this story, it's because you have a skewed perception of America. There's a lot of people who claim to report hate crimes. A lot of them ended up to be hoaxes. And so we have a high demand of racism, but people aren't meeting the demand. So people are actually making the deficit up with hoaxes. We've seen people say, oh, they wrote the N-word on my car, or they wrote in my garage, or it was painted on the church. And it was like, no, the people who claimed that happened were the ones who did it, and so on. Or people like, oh my gosh, there was someone, a hooded figure that was in the window. It was like, it was a projector screen with like a tarp on it or something. And I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stories that people had. The Bubba incident with the rope on his garage door, and it was just a knot, and then they said it was a noose, and you had all these people from NASCAR who stood with them and in solidarity, and people would have been mad at me because I would have been like, this story sounds stupid. They had all these FBI people show up to investigate this. There's so many things going on in the world, but they had all these FBI agents show up to investigate this noose situation, but you had all these NASCAR drivers who walked with him in solidarity. But if I was them, I would have been like, the story doesn't sound right, so I'm just gonna chill. Like, people would have been mad at me, calling me racist and all kinds of other stuff, and I would have been like, I just want to wait for the facts. Like, like, not that I'm not calling you a liar, bro, but maybe you misunderstood something. So and maybe you think I'm full of it and would have just went along with everybody else. I can tell you I would not have. People would have been so mad at me because it didn't make any sense when I heard it. And of course it was just a knot. It was just a knot. And then he had some bad press afterwards because it seemed like he was like embarrassed a little bit. Then he doubled down and stuff. So people aren't too fond of him. But I want to show you example back then with the Jussie Smollett case and someone who had a skewed perception. So Ellen Page, who's now goes by Elliot because she changed her gender. FYI, the pronouns thing, I don't really do the you say you're a girl, you say you're a boy. It's you are what you are. That's how I do it. So if you're triggered, again, I don't care. But you know where I stand, so be respectful of where I stand. And if you don't want to, then there's the door, the virtual door. So anyway, Ellen Page was on, and still Ellen at this time, was on late night talking about Jussie Smollett and went in a rant. It was a little awkward for me, and ended up getting like a standing ovation and ranted about a lot of things, society and the way that the world is today. So I want to go back and play a little bit of that.
You have a media that's saying it's a debate whether or not what just happened to Jussie Smollett is a hate crime. It's absurd. This isn't a debate.
I agree.
Sorry,
I love the little nod there, like, yeah, like clap here.
Not at all.
I'm like really fired up tonight.
This is how you have to be fired up.
It feels impossible to not feel this way right now with
the
president and the vice president, Mike Pence, who like wishes I couldn't be married. Let's just be clear. The vice president of America wishes I didn't have the love with my wife.
Okay, so someone has just been attacked, allegedly hate crime, and then she goes on to make it about her, and then she brings up her wife, who she filed for divorce for. So it didn't last long, but who knows the future. So yeah, they actually filed for divorce earlier this year.
He wanted to ban that in Indiana. He believes in conversion therapy. He has hurt LGBTQ people so badly as the government of Indiana, and I think the thing we need to know, and I hope my show Gaycation did this.
Okay, so I've never seen Gaycation, but I do want to point out a thing or two. So Miss Ellen Page, the conversion therapy, a lot of people have said that, but it's been like around Twitter and people talking about it for a while. And Mike Pence has said, no, that's not a thing about me being like really for it. So what it comes down to, I believe, the origin of this is on a campaign website when he was running for Congress. They just talked about funding institutions that would help people if they wanted to make a change or were confused, I guess, whatever, about their sexual orientation or identity and whatnot. And so when people say conversion therapy, I think in their minds, a lot of people go to like getting shocked, getting the gay shocked out of you. That's not what it is. But the Obama administration actually tried to stop people from being even able to have conversations with people to I guess have therapy about it, to make that decision or to sort of decide to live differently, which people do. So I don't think places like, whether your government funds need to go into places like that is another matter, but trying to shut them down is another. But this whole like anger that people have, I just want people to be aware of, it's not probably as intense as you think it is. But I understand people being emotional about it, I guess. But if you do decide to, like, for example, there's a lot of people on TikTok who decide to who convert to have some kind of Christian conversion, and people say they're no longer same-sex attracted, or there's people who are still same-sex attracted, but they just are deciding not to live that out. People get really, 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 really angry at those people, even especially people who decide to detransition, because people will say that they feel like they're being delegitimized. So I just want people to be aware that when they say conversion therapy and Mike Pence is for conversion therapy, it is not Mike Pence bolting you down and electrocuting you or driving a spike through your brain or something like that. It's not like that. If that's what people have in mind. And actually there were memes going around with like Mike Pence with like electric eyes and powers and like Raiden hats even. So the jokes evolved from there. But that's not really what it is. And then she also mentioned Trump. And I don't know why so many people chose to believe that Trump was so anti-LGBT, because I don't think he's holding up gay pride flags. He's worked in the beauty pageant industries and stuff around gay people all this time. He's like the first president actually going into office not anti-LGBT. I mean, you had other people really fighting against other stuff. And as soon as like his first big interview that he had, he was like, I think it's the court issue is kind of a settled thing. And kind of let that be that. So people still really tried to push this Trump hates the gays thing. And I follow one person on TikTok. She's a lesbian, and she's had several accounts taken down and had to rebuild her account time and time again. But people call her a token, and she would have to keep debunking time and time again what people were saying about Trump. Chad Felix Green does it a lot too. I think, does he write for the Federalist? But he's a writer, a conservative writer, and he's gay. And he's had to debunk, I think he wrote a book actually about debunking the web of lies that people have about Trump involving the LGBT community. So, but she has Understandably, her hurt feelings, but her perception is just a little skewed. A little skewed.
In terms of connecting the dots, in terms of what happened the other day to Jussie, I don't know him personally. I send all of my love. Connect the dots. This is what happens. If you are in a position of power and you hate people and you want to cause suffering to them, you go through the trouble. You spend your career trying to cause suffering.
So this is a bit hysterical as well. No one is trying to cause people. I guess there's people out there trying to cause like legitimate suffering, but sometimes people just have a different worldview. Sometimes people have a different way of thinking. Sometimes it's just a difference of opinion. No one is out there trying to make you suffer. And when you constantly feel like a victim, this is a Hollywood actress who had her star rise to fame from being a knocked up teen. That Juno, was her big movie. And she lives in America. Now, she actually had quite a conversion herself. And now she's Elliot. And she lives in America that when she came out, there are people who said some stuff about it, but mostly she knew that when she took the hormones and chopped off her breasts and put out these pictures that she and did these interviews, that there'd be people who would lavish her with praise. So that's the kind of America that we live in, regardless of whether Trump or Pence was the president or not. So I think they know that America is a lot better than what they give it credit for, but they know there's power in being the victim. Even if you're a famous Hollywood actress, they know there's power in that victimhood. People like to feel that high. People love it.
What do you think is going to happen? Kids are going to be abused and they're going to kill themselves. And people are going to be beaten on the street. I have traveled the world and I have met the most marginalized people you can meet. I am lucky to have this time and the privilege to say this. This needs to stop.
Okay, I'm reminding everyone that rant was all started around a hoax. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was never plausible, but she lives in a warped reality where that sort of thing seems likely because she hates the people, or she's suspicious of these people that she doesn't like because they have different worldviews and ideology. Like, and they take it so personal. She's never. I take it she's probably never sat down and had a conversation with Mike Pence, who seems like he's pretty nice. I've met him actually, but not long, in-depth conversations on my part. But I take it that she probably hasn't sat down and tried to get to know the man. And you know what? People don't actually want us to have conversations and be different, and then still be able to come together. For example, Gina Carano, she was on Star Wars. She on the Mandalorian show. So she played Cara Dune, and she started becoming conservative a bit. So I don't know what her background it was prior, like her political background was prior to a couple years ago. But she was like, you know what? I'm an adult. I need to start researching some stuff. And as she's looking at some stuff, turns out that she's leaning a little right. So anyway, there's the pronoun police that people are like, I'll use my pronouns. I want you to state your pronouns. Now, Abigail Schreier, who wrote Irreversible Damage, I read a whole piece, basically the whole show yesterday was her talking about how everyone hates her and how it's actually liberating. And it's how important it is for you to stand up. And people hate her because she wrote a book about the transgender craze that is taking over young women like Miss Ellen Page. And so, and she wrote it not because she wanted to tell this story initially because parents were coming to her saying, no one will help, no one will write this story. Will you please consider it? She tried to get other people to write it. No one else would tell the story. So she wrote the story, and she said she wrote it because it was the truth. So anyway, something that she mentioned in the piece was that she herself believes in giving the courtesy of referring to someone by their pronouns, but she will not participating in telling other people her pronouns. When people ask, well, what are your pronouns? She says, I'm a woman. Like it's not obvious, but she says I'm a woman because she's not going to just, she wants to be respectful to the people who are trans, but she's not about to just rewarp reality into their political ideology. So that's her outlook. I'm just like hard line in the sand. I'm not doing either. That's how I feel. Because I know it's not true, and I'm not about to lie for you. That's how I feel. That's where I'm coming from, and you cannot like it. But tolerance is being able to take it. Okay. So Gina Carano, they were like, "What's your pronouns? What's your pronouns?" So she wrote "beep bop boop," and of course she's poking fun at these people. Not people in the LGBT community. She's poking fun at the people who are the mob, who are the police, and trying to enforce all these things. So she wrote like some other posts here and there, but that the beat bop in the overtime, but the beat bop boop post got her in trouble with Disney and Lucasfilm. So she was talking to their press people, and they wanted her to apologize. And so she's like, well, I'm not going to give an insincere apology. So I can just explain that I don't mean in disrespect to the LGBT community, but I don't believe you should be forcing speech or whatnot. And so she wanted to explain her side of things. And she was working with all these people. They had like Disney had an LGBT specialist like come over and talk to her. Now I wonder how many people they have, I don't know, in other categories for kind of more classic sort of stuff. I just found it curious that they had a specialized, I'm not surprised, but just know that they had like a specialized person come over to talk to Gina Carano in this category. So they said, we understand where you're coming from, but your problem is that you're trying to think logically about this, and people had an emotional reaction to it. And she's just like, why can't I be logical? Why can't I be logical? So this is what they tried to do. So they tried to say, well, we're going to set up a Zoom call, because this is like during like COVID and stuff, right? So they're like, let's set up a Zoom call. Actually, no, I don't know how deep it was. Was it that deep? I don't know. I can't recall how deep it was at the time, but she said well, let's set up a Zoom call, and with like 40 LGBT people, and have a conversation with them. And so she, in her mind, she's like, that sounds like a trap. And so she's like, how about instead of that, I take like maybe 3-4 people out to dinner. They can look into my eyes. I can look into their eyes. We can have a conversation. They can know I'm a human being, and they can just see where I'm coming from, and I can see where they're coming from. And Disney didn't like that. So after she would not comply the way that they wanted her to comply, she was willing to like apologize and try to clean it up or whatever. But she wasn't going to bend the knee in an insincere sort of way. To just say, oh, I am a terrible person and I need to respect people's pronouns and I'm an ignorant white woman who's cisgender. Like, she didn't want an apology like that. She wasn't willing to write something like that. So Disney was like, okay, that was the last conversation that they had with her. So she made a tweet about COVID here or there. And so the one that got her canned, she wrote a tweet that was like, in reference to the Holocaust, about basically snitching on your neighbors. And then Disney put out, Lucasfilm was like, oh, she disrespected this faith community. And, and like she was some kind of anti-Semite. And they totally misrepresented her tweet, her intention, and candor. And they didn't even call her. It was just, they released a statement. They're like, we don't have any plans to work with Gina. And that was pretty amazing, especially since her co-star, Pascal, I can't think of his first name, but he has tweeted things that were not PC, especially about the right side of the aisle. I had a tweet. I posted a tweet of his not too long ago because he was one of the celebrities that was standing up for the Rittenhouse assailants. You know, one of them being a child rapist. So they'll go to bat for them, but Gina, they canned her. So the Daily Wire ended up picking her up. I did do a pretty good summary of events on my YouTube page. If you guys want to check that up, it was like 5 takeaways from the Gina Carano thing. And the most important takeaway, though, for me, for the whole situation, it was terrible what Disney did. And one of the reasons why I think they're an evil organization right now, and I don't, if I cannot support them, I'm standing on really not doing it. And there's other reasons as well. Just it's a buildup, but I hate it. I hate it when that happened. But one of the big takeaways from that whole situation is the fact that Gina Carano was not very political. She was not very political. She was someone who was gaining ground, getting her feet wet a little bit, researching. So they had this opportunity to reach out to this woman, to explain their side of things, to get her to be a compassionate leftist, you know, compassionate, tolerant leftist, as they try to put it, to you know, present their case, their facts, why they believe what they believe, and to appeal to Gina. But instead, they called her an anti-Semitic bigot and fired her from her job. And now she's working with the Daily Wire. So that's how you red pill people really fast. And she wasn't the only one who was red pilled from that situation, I tell you that. So when you push people too far, they find out who they are. And she found out she's a conservative because she wasn't very well rooted in it. She said, I'm an adult. I need to research this stuff. And then she started expressing some things that weren't even remotely that controversial. And she ended up losing her job. Disney, they said it was because, I mean, that's when they got rid of her after that tweet that they claim was like disrespecting the Jewish faith and the people, which was not the case. But they were basically done with her after that beep bop boop tweet. And they weren't doing like press stuff with her anymore, wasn't in contact, according to her. So they were looking for a reason to can her. And that's when they let her go. So we live in a darn crazy world. So someone said, how much crazier can this world get? I don't know. But that's why it's important that we have these conversations and we point this out and we talk about it. I mentioned this yesterday, I think. I've mentioned it a few times, but the actor John Snyder, who's on Smallville, he and Dukes of Hazzard, but he did a video talking about, they can't cancel me, I quit. Like, he left Hollywood, he got his own little studio, he started making stuff himself, and he puts it out through his own like distribution chain. He's like, not because they don't have interest in it. He's like, but I don't want to be tempted by their money. And he's like, and maybe that won't always be the case, but he doesn't want to be tempted in that sort of way. So he's doing his own thing. Other people are doing their own thing. Daily Wire is doing their own thing. They picked up Gina. They picked up other people who were let go or canceled and whatnot. Tim Pool's making his own kind of content, and other people are doing it too. There's this guy that I follow, Young Rip 85. Is it 85 or 95? Maybe, I think it's 85 on YouTube. His real name is Eric July, but he does like pop culture. He's a libertarian, a black libertarian. I believe he's a libertarian. So I like his commentary on the news, and also he talks comic books and stuff like that. But he's making his own kind of content and to compete with like Marvel and so on. He's like, that's what I'm gunning for, to give like people an alternative. And he has a rule: don't spend more than 50% of your money on people who hate you. And I think that's a pretty good rule. There's one comic book artist in DC, after they started doing some crazy stuff they made after, can't remember if he quit after Superman son was gay and started dating a pink-haired hacktivist, or if it was when they decided to make an Amazon transgender. But they decided to quit, and then I guess Eric July picked him up. And so they're going to be working together. I don't know if Eric's going to produce great comic books or not, but people are trying. People are trying to produce different content to give people different options, different solutions. Trump was talking about doing his digital platform and doing social media and other stuff. People are trying to find different ways. And when you guys can, you just got to find a way to sort of support. Because we live in a super hyper crazy world, and it's not going to get any better if we just keep feeding the machine. So how crazier can this world get? I think it can get less crazy if it starts hurting their wallets, but there's some people so devoted to their ideology that it's going to have to be a big impact before they say shut up. Jennifer Lawrence, she's pretty left wing, but she stopped talking about politics for a little while because she saw it was maybe hurting her box office numbers, and her family's like, why don't you just cool it on that stuff? Why don't you just cool it a little bit? So people can be taught. People can be taught, but I hope, as the reporter asked Jen Psaki, that people learn to not jump to conclusions, that they learn to just chill out a little bit. And yes, Jen Psaki did kind of parrot the talking points and use Trump as a shield to shield President Biden and Kamala Harris. Like, and to be fair, that's her job. That's what she's supposed to do. I hate that she lies all the time, but she actually, in an objective sort of way, I don't like her in an objective sort of way. She did her job today, I think, representing her boss. But we got to fight back. We got to fight back. The Jussie Smollett case was insane. It's hilarious. I don't know how many years he'll end up getting. We'll have to wait on the sentencing. I'm glad justice was done. People should not be able to make up these hate hoaxes and get away with it. A lot of people have, and I made stuff up and have gotten away with it, but hopefully if he's held accountable, maybe people will stop. But he's also an idiot. I wonder how many times people try to get away with this kind of stuff and have gotten away with the stuff, but he was, like I said, an idiot, writing a check out to the people he paid to do a federal crime to. That wasn't a good look. That wasn't smart. Of course, doing the practice run that was on surveillance, and just the setting, the location, the story itself was just ridiculous. Why? I mean, maybe they went out at 2 a.m. because they figured there wouldn't be any sort of witnesses to what happened, and they could just go by their story. But it was so not plausible. And the only reason why you thought it was is because you have a skewed sense of America, much like Ellen Page does. And I'm not saying Ellen Page hasn't spent time with marginalized people who've had terrible sort of stories and things like that. But we live in a very blessed society. And I wouldn't, as sometimes people, especially in the writing community, guys know I write books. They're like, what age would you like to live in? I'm like, I would rather not live in any other time other than this one right here. Like, people like, oh, it'd be fun to go back in time and cowboy days and stuff like that. No, that's not good for folks like me. I don't think so. I'm very blessed to live in the United States of America right here, right now, in this time. And a lot of older people, like my dad and my aunts and whoever, when all this like BLM stuff started popping up, people were upset about racial divisions. They didn't appreciate how people were acting like we've made no progress, and people were acting like they have such scars from things they didn't even experience. Or maybe they experienced something but was nothing on the level that other people had to go through at all. Like, my dad told a story in church last Sunday about how some cops were trying to provoke him to anger, to make him get into a really bad situation that could have ended badly for him when he was much younger. The world's just a really different today. And I'm not saying people don't go through those sort of things now, but those sort of things could happen a lot back then. So people don't take into a lot of consideration how good we have it here in America today. And to believe this story from Jussie Smollett, if you believed it for even a second, I think you need to check your mentality on the world, your outlook on the world. So I hope Ellen has realized that was moronic. And she had her big speech on Colbert, and other people had their tweets and their speeches, and they're like, this is so terrible. And they're like, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. Well, it's not happening is the problem. It's got to stop. It didn't happen. So maybe you need to give America more credit, because it deserves more credit than what you're giving to it. We live in a great country. It's a great nation, and I would rather be nowhere else in this world. And other people who immigrate over here, and other people who want to immigrate over here, they realize how great it is. You don't have all these people from all over the world trying to get into America because it's a terrible, awful place for minorities. And even people who've accepted that there's racism in the world and you'll never get rid of all of it, especially since a lot of people who are pushing to get rid of racism are actually the racists, because they know that there's power in racism. So there's people who will never let it go, never let it die. But there's enough people who realize that despite the trials you may face, America is still an amazing place to be. So I'm blessed. You are blessed if you're here. I know other people from over the world are watching and tuning into Black Tea. I thank you guys for doing that. But America's a blessed place, and I wish you were here with me. Thank you guys for tuning into the show today. Please check out blacktnews.com. If you would like to support, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate to leave a donation on the website. If you would want to check out us, I know people ask questions about where can you get the merchandise on blacktnews.com. I do have the goat hoodie in different colors. So someone was like, I'm going to spill something on myself. So I did make it in different colors. So you can check out the different options we have. We got all kinds of stuff. This shirt right here, I was inspired after Gina Carano's situation. I'm not the victim you're looking for. And I think a lot of people should embrace that today. So go ahead and check out the merchandise on the website, and follow me on social medias at Black Tea News, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. God bless you all, and tune in tomorrow night, 7:30 for Let's Talk About It, when we talk about different TikTok videos. And then I will see you Monday at 4 p.m. to discuss the news of the day. God bless.